This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross. The Book of Mormon is celebrating its 15th anniversary on Broadway. It received 9 Tonys, including Best Musical and Best Score. My guests were 2 of the stars of the original Broadway cast, Andrew Rannells and Josh Gad. They're back this week, making cameo appearances in every show as part of the anniversary celebration. Several other members of the original cast, as well as the show's creators, will be making cameos too. Rannells was still in the Book of Mormon when he started shooting girls as the character Elijah, Hannah's good friend. He was in the Broadway productions of Jersey Boys, Hairspray, and Falsettos, and is now starring with Alice and Janney in the new HBO movie Miss You, Love You. Josh Gad was one of the lead voices in Frozen as Olaf the Snowman, and that animated film became a phenomenon. He's currently planning to direct a Chris Farley biopic. The Book of Mormon revolves around 2 young Mormon men who are very excited that they've reached the age where they're assigned to a mission. They're hoping to be sent to an exciting, beautiful place, but they're assigned to Uganda, which is dealing with the AIDS epidemic, war, and famine. The show is a satirical, but kind of affectionate, but could also be considered kind of offensive, look at Mormon beliefs and the naïveté of some young men. It was created and written by Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the creators of South Park, along with Robert Lopez, who co-wrote the songs for Frozen and Avenue Q. A 15th anniversary remastered edition of the original Book of Mormon cast recording, along with new liner notes and photos, will be released later this month. Let's start with the opening song, Hello, as the young missionaries are being trained on how to go door-to-door proselytizing. We'll hear the opening of the song featuring Rannells and the conclusion of the song featuring Josh Gad.
Hello, my name is Elder Price, and I would like to share with you the most amazing book. Hello, my name is Elder Grant. It's a book about America a long, long time ago. It has so many awesome parts, you simply won't believe how much this book can change your life.
Hello, would you like to change religions? I have a free book written by Jesus!
No, Elder Cunningham. That's not how we do it. You're making things up again. Just stick to the approved dialogue. Elder, show it!
Hello!
My name is
Elder Cunningham!
and we would like to share with you this book of Jesus Christ.
Hello!
Josh Gad, Andrew Rannells, welcome back to Fresh Air. Congratulations on the 15th anniversary.
Thank you. Thanks for having us back.
I'm delighted to have you here. I love that song. I think it's a great opening to the show. I'm wondering, since it's all about 2 missionaries training to go door to door, did you have people coming to your door when you were growing up who were Mormons trying to convert you?
I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and there is a pretty large Mormon population there, as well as a large Jehovah's Witness population. So we did. But I grew up extremely Catholic. And not that we weren't kind to these young people when they came to the door, but I think it was something that we were definitely warned about. That if my mother saw these people like coming up the steps, she'd be like, oh boy, here they come.
Did you ever let them in?
Oh, no. We weren't.
Did you try to convert them?
No, we didn't go that far either. I think she was just like, oh, we're Catholic and, but thanks for stopping by.
And Josh, what about you?
I grew up in South Florida, and Hollywood, Florida did not have many Mormons from what I remember knocking on our door. It was only sort of later, going into the process of Book of Mormon, I did not know a lot about the Mormon Church. I had to sort of research a lot about it.
Terry, I do, just very quickly, when we were in rehearsals for the workshop, I decided that I should be a good little actor, and I should go to the Mormon temple.
I remember this. And
I should meet with some Mormon missionaries. So I got myself ensnared in a very strange relationship with these 2 young men who I met with a handful of times, and they were so excited that someone wanted to talk to them and that I solicited them. And then they said, can we come to your home? And I lived with my boyfriend at the time. And the apartment was like, it was pretty clear 2 gay men lived there. I mean, it was like real like mid-century off the charts, you know what I'm saying? And so I was like, you know what? Let's let them come in. So these 2 Mormon missionaries came over, and there's like a picture of my boyfriend and I like on the mantle. And so I had to explain to them that I was like, I'm actually in a musical about the Mormon church, and they were sort of shocked. But then it was so helpful because they really opened up to me about how scary and disappointing it was to be a missionary at times, and especially being a missionary in New York City. They were like, no one will speak to us. People are very mean to us. And then I was like, well, where are you hanging out? And they're like, well, they send us to Times Square. And I was like, well, you got to get out of Times Square. You cannot be hanging out in Times Square, boys.
How have your voices changed in the past 15 years? You've sung a lot, you've done a lot, you're older.
I was insulted yesterday when our producer came up to me and said, you sound so much better than you did back when you first did it.
Really?
Yes. And I was like, what? Did I really not sound good when I first did
No,
this
you
show?
sounded great.
You can tell me now, Andrew.
No, you sounded fantastic.
Well, you don't know how to... Is that a compliment or an insult?
Well, that's what I'm wondering.
I think you sound the same. I mean, look, our voices are different. 15 years,
Right.
There's a lot of wear and tear. Some of it is muscle memory. I would say some of it comes back. I got to perform this number, I believe, on Stephen Colbert's show. That was the number that I sang on the Tony Awards.
Sounded fantastic.
Well, that's very nice. But that, weirdly, as we were rehearsing it, like, it was still somewhere like lodged in my voice. And I think you're having a similar...
Same thing. When I found out I was doing this, I played the album in the car and I started to sing along. And some of those high notes, I just was like, oh my God, I can't, how am I going to hit these? And I actually asked them to lower it and they laughed and said no. And then, and then I started to sort of do it on my feet. And just like you said, something clicks and it all sort of like, it's like riding a bike. It's just sort of in there somewhere.
Now, the physical side of it, Terry, is a little different.
Yeah.
Physically doing some of these numbers, that's where the aging process really catches up to you.
You mean like you can't sing as much as
Well,
long?
you can't. I can't dance as much as I used to. The singing part is a little easier to control. The physical, the knees, the getting up and down off the ground, that's all a little bit different.
Although you're lucky, you don't have to do any of the big dance numbers.
That's not a coincidence. I said no to all of those.
Why didn't I say no to that?
They were like, do you want to do this big dance number? And I said, no, thank you.
When you first read the book for the Book of Mormon and then heard the songs, what was your reaction? Because depending on who you are, it's hilarious or incredibly offensive.
The script changed so heavily, and I don't know what this says about me, that I remember reading it when I was auditioning for the show and not being fazed by any of it and just sort of like, okay, that sounds great. And then because I'm playing this Mormon missionary who is shocked by all of these things that are being said. So it was very easy to sort of, to play that part because a lot of it is sort of shocking and is not your typical musical theater fare. I heard the humor in it and I felt very confident that people were going to think it was funny. I certainly didn't think it would be still running on Broadway after 15 years and would have toured to Salt Lake City. I didn't think that they would have done that, but it did.
I was involved from the very first workshop, and I remember getting a demo, and the first song I heard, I laughed my butt off. It was, hello, bum, 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 bum. The second song was, 2 by 2, we're marching door to door. And these songs were just so fun. And then I got to a song called Hasadiga Ibawai. And at that point, I called my agent at the time and I said, I don't think I can do this show. And he said, why? And I said, because I don't want to get killed.
So, with Hasadiga Ibawai, it's like Hakuna Matata from The Lion King. And, a general in Uganda sings it. And he's saying, like when things are really bad, there's famine, there's war, everybody has AIDS. But when we think about that, we lift our hands to the sky and we sing Hasadiga Ibawe. And you're expecting that that's going to be a really inspirational phrase, but what that really means is, it's an expletive addressed to God. And
Yes.
there are so many people who will never get past that, I'm sure. And Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the creators of the show, along with Robert Lopez, when I interviewed them, they said, that's the point where who's in and who is out.
That is true. That is true.
I guess my answer would be I'm shocked 15 years later at how many people are in.
Well, but I think it speaks to, people who are having, there are horrible things that are happening around them, horrible things that are happening to them, and it speaks to this fear of the absence of God in those moments. So I think Trey and Matt and Bobby have written something that I think really pulls from like a deep truth or a deep fear that people have, which is there a God? Where has God gone? And it's set to this really sort of playful, animated music. But the question is there a God in this place?
I think it was a few years ago that the black actors in the cast, the actors who play the people in Uganda, they requested revisions in the script because, well, you can tell me more. I mean, they thought that the characters were depicted in a condescending or offensive way. Can you tell us what kind of changes were requested and what kind of changes were made?
Well, this was long after Josh and I had left the production, so we were not a part of these conversations. But we did have this conversation with one of the original cast members just yesterday, in fact. And I think an important thing that he brought up was while we were developing this show, when this whole original cast was, we were a part of the creation. We witnessed the writing changes. Trey and Matt and Bobby were explaining sort of where these things were coming from, or we were a part of creating them. And I think, unfortunately, the context of a lot of these things that we do in the show were not correctly passed on to the people who then continued with the show. So years after we had created it, it became sort of this odd game of telephone where people would come into the show and they were told, well, we just do this and we just say this, and they were never given the context. So, rightly so, people had questions and people wanted answers about why are we doing this? And why did anyone think this was funny? And so some of it was specifically, I can't tell you what exactly was changed, but I think that the larger conversation that was started was about how it was created and where it came from.
So let's hear some music. I want to start with I Believe. And that's like your big showpiece, Andrew. And so I want you to describe the context of the song.
The context of the song, I mean, Bobby Lopez has been very open about. It was very much inspired by the song "I Have Confidence" from The Sound of Music. It's Elder Price sort of building
your character
of my character, Elder Price, sort of building himself up to go back out and sort of reaffirm his faith, and he's going to double down on this, and he's going to go and try to convert these people in Uganda after he arrives and nothing is going the way he wants it to or the way he hoped it would, and he feels very beaten down. But then he has this moment where he decides, I can do this. I can do this, and I'm going to start with the village warlord. That's going to be my guy, and I'm going to start with that guy, and if I can convert him, then everybody else will fall into place. And so most of the song is him building himself up to do this.
So let's hear Andrew Rannells from the original cast recording of the Book of Mormon singing I Believe.
You cannot just believe partway. You have to believe in it all. My problem was doubting the Lord's will instead of standing tall. I can't allow myself to have any doubt. It's time to set my worries free. Time to show the world what Elder Price is about and share the power inside of me.
So that was Andrew Rannells from the original cast recording of the Book of Mormon singing I Believe. There's some really high notes in that.
Yeah.
And I know one night you lost your voice right before singing it, and you managed to get through the song?
That happened many times, but you do a show 8 times a week for
You
over
lost
a
your
year.
voice on stage many times?
I mean, yeah, over the course of my career, that's something that happens. I mean, not just in the Book of Mormon, but in other shows. Like you learn to sing through sickness, and you learn to sing through. I mean, there are nights where there are certain notes missing in your voice all of a sudden, and you don't find out until you're on stage in front of 1,200 people, and you're like, oh boy, and you just have to figure out a way to sing around it. But it was, after previews, after opening, after the Tony Awards, I hadn't missed any performances, and I started my career as a replacement, as an understudy. I was not accustomed to the idea that I could call out of a show, and I probably shouldn't have done the show that night, but I remember it was like a couple weeks after the Tony Awards, and I sang this duet that Josh and I sang called You and Me, But Mostly Me, and it was kind of a disaster, but I just continued. With the show, and I was like, I'm gonna try to make this work.
It was actually remarkable to watch.
But then I pulled that very deep out of my soul, and I got through I Believe somehow, and like sang the whole thing. And I amazed myself that I could do it. And then I got to another song that's called Orlando. I don't know if you remember this, Josh. Mm-hmm. And it's supposed to end with a little falsetto thing where I say, and I'll never go back to, and I'm supposed to go, you. And instead I went, never go back to you. And the curtain flew up, and all the missionaries come out, and everyone was laughing. Yeah. And then after the bows that night, I walked off stage, and I remember Karen Moore, our stage manager, was standing there, and I burst into tears, and I said, I have to miss a show. And she said, you're allowed to miss a show. And I just like cried about it. It was so, yeah, it had never occurred to me.
I sometimes get laryngitis when I get a cold. And I had laryngitis just a few weeks ago. And I always say to myself, your voice will come back. But there's a little part of my brain saying, what if it doesn't?
Absolutely.
Oh, it's
Do you go through that?
Absolutely. Or when your voice is low and all of a sudden you sound like, like Kathleen Turner, and you're like, will it always sound like this?
Do you remember when I had laryngitis opening night of Gutenberg?
Yes. Josh got very sick when we did Gutenberg.
Night.
And we call it Dr. Footlights on Broadway. You can sound terrible, and then all of a sudden you get on stage, and something adrenaline happens, and Josh got through this whole 2-person show that we did with a lot of music in it, and you just did it.
There was no
option.
There was no option. No. Opening night, 2-person show, not many options.
Well, Josh, let's hear your big number in the show. And this is Man Up. Do you want to explain the context?
Yeah, so, for all of Act 1, Cunningham is a follower, a self-described follower, and he really looks to...
A follower,
of Elder Price.
Of Elder Price, and he's the lead.
And he actually, there's a duet with the two of them called You and Me, But Mostly Me, where Elder Price sings about the fact that this is really his journey, and Elder Cunningham can be a sidekick on that journey. He can, have a small little part of that journey, but he just basically needs to stay out of Price's way and follow. And Elder Cunningham is very happy to do that because he's never had somebody who will actually not leave and abandon him. And then something happens over the course of the first act, and Cunningham finds that he's been abandoned again, but for the first time in his life, he has somebody in the form of this character, Nabalungi, who's one of the villagers, and she basically tells him, hey, why don't you take the mantle? Why don't you show us the way forward? And this sparks a light bulb moment in Cunningham, and he decides that for the first time in his life, he has an opportunity to take the reins, to step from the role of sidekick into the role of the main star. And so this song is that sort of culmination of that journey.
Let's listen to it.
What did Jesus do when they sentenced him to die? Did he try to run away? Did he just break down and cry? No, Jesus dug down deep, knowing what he had to do. When faced with his own death, Jesus knew that he had to man up. He had to man up. So he crawled up on that cross and he stuck it out. And he manned up. Christ, he manned up. And taught us all what real manning up is about. And now it's up to me and it's time to man up. Jesus had his time and now it's time to man up.
So, Josh, do you hear a little bit of Footloose in that song?
I've never thought about that until now. Yeah, it's definitely, well, it's got a very 80s quality to it. I remember from the very first workshop that song existed. And actually, the very first workshop we did, Trey, Matt, and Bobby had not written any of Act 2. So the show just literally ended with Man Up, but it wasn't an ensemble. It was just me. And it ended with me basically being like, man up. And that was it. And they were like, we went to black. And so it evolved into what it evolved into. But, the influences of each of these songs, including Man Up, comes from a place of absolute weird devotion to musical theater on the part of Trey Parker and Matt Stone. Obviously, Bobby Lopez comes from that world. But when you look at Trey and Matt, the first thing you think of is not necessarily like musical theater acumen. And these are two guys that people forget. When they wrote South Park Bigger, Longer, Uncut, the feature film adaptation of the hit Comedy Central show, they got a letter from Stephen Sondheim, who's probably the most acclaimed composer and lyricist of the 20th century. And he basically said, this is one of the top 10 most brilliantly realized musicals he's ever seen. And I really do think that part of the reason this show endures is because each one of these songs is instantaneously hummable. Yep. Each one of these songs, you say Footloose in the case of Man Up, but each one of these songs reminds you of something, but it's never pastiche. It's never sort of making fun of a genre. It is fully embracing it and earning its space. Yeah. So you have an 11 o'clock number, and I believe that is as powerful, potent, and as mesmerizing and memorable as an 11 o'clock number from Guys and Dolls.
Well, I think, and a lot of people would come in to see the Book of Mormon and say, I don't really like musicals, but I do like this one. And which was always funny to me because every number was, I don't want to say a ripoff, but was a tribute.
It was homage.
You and Me, but mostly Me is essentially The Wizard and I from Wicked. Mm-hmm. And
Turn It Off? What's Turn It Off?
Don't ask me that one. No, but then like the pageant at the end of
King and I.
That's from the King and I. Like they built in all of these moments.
Hasadiga, Hakuna Matata.
Hakuna Matata.
Well, one of them's kind of like You Got Trouble from The Music Man.
Yes. Yeah. The All American Prophet. Yeah, absolutely.
So since we're talking about the Book of Mormon, tell me if you grew up with religion. Well, Andrew, I know you did. You grew up very Catholic.
Very Catholic.
But I'm going to ask you to tell a story, which you write about in your memoir.
Sure.
About how when you were, I think, 16 and in high school, you were seeing somebody who was in their 40s, who was 40, and was involved with, I think he was a director of community theater.
That's right.
And you felt like you had to tell somebody about this, that there's something that didn't seem right. And so you spoke to, of all people, your priest. Can you tell us what happened?
Sure. Well, first, just let me clarify that the relationship, if you'd like to call it that, the situation that I was in with this older man was one that I felt very trapped in, and I felt that I had been trapped in this situation by this man in his 40s. I was 16 years old. I didn't quite know how to get out of it. I didn't feel confident that I could talk to my parents about it. I didn't really feel like I had any friends that I could talk to about it. And I went to an all-boys Catholic school, and I decided in confession one day to tell this priest, who is also a teacher of mine, that I really trusted and really liked, about this relationship in the hopes that he could maybe give me some guidance to get out of it. And at the end of the confession, he gave me a hug, and then he kissed me, but not like a simple kiss, like a full, like open mouth kiss. And then that continued for a couple years, that priest then felt like he had an open door to do that to me. Which was wild that's how and maybe that's why, Terry, when I read the script of the Book of Mormon, and I was like, well, I don't really have a problem with satirizing religion because I don't know if I have the greatest relationship with it myself.
It's a very Me Too kind of story.
Yeah.
Did you leave? Well, you can leave. You can stop going to Sunday services. You can't stop going to school. Did you tell anyone in the school or tell your parents?
No. I told my parents later, and I told when my first book, Too Much Is Not Enough, came out, then the school did reach out to me and ask about it. And
Did they?
They did. They did.
What did they say? What did they say, and what did you say?
They asked who it was, and I told them specifically who, which priest it was, and nothing was done about it. It was not like there was any
consequences.
There was no consequences to it, but they just wanted to know. And looking back, of course, there were a ton of people I could have talked to about this. There were adults all around me that I could have trusted. As a kid, no. And you feel like I felt like at 16, then 17, that I should know better. I should know how to do this. I'm an adult, right? And it's a hard thing with kids. Josh and I both have kids who are, teenagers. There are going to be moments like that they will go through that they might not share with us. And I think that's been the real trick recently, is trying to figure out what kind of language can you use with your kids or with nieces and nephews that I am a safe place to come to for anything, for any of these, anything that happens.
Did that end your relationship with the church?
For a long time, yeah. Yeah, for a long time. It's interesting how it kind of swings back around periodically. When I will go to Omaha and for the holidays or whatever, and my mother will ask us to go to church. And I used to fight it with her, and now I sort of feel like I can develop my own relationship with this religion that a lot of it, I have really fond memories of going to church as a kid. I learned a lot from growing up Catholic, and so I don't want to, it wasn't all negative. So I feel like now in my 40s that I'm figuring out a way to hang on to a little bit of it. It feels a little more cultural than it does spiritual. But I'm trying to figure out a way to balance that a little bit more.
Josh, let's get to you.
Well, how am I going to even begin to go after that story?
What do you mean?
Oh, I have a suggestion.
Oh, boy.
Oh, God.
I have a suggestion, yes. Your father was from Afghanistan and was Jewish and also had a secret family that you didn't know about. A secret family in, I forget which country in South America.
Colombia.
Colombia, yeah.
Yes.
So I was just starting with religion.
So I'll see your priest, Andrew, and raise you an Afghani. Secret family in Colombia. Yes, no, well, it actually does tie into this theme, in that my father was a very religious Jew. And in the same way that Andrew's story presents a much more horrific version, but a version of hypocrisy, I saw this man who I love dearly and who is my father, but who is very flawed and who is hiding behind Scripture, which openly states, thou shalt not do all of the things you're about to do. And I was very confused because I was being forced to go to temple every week and walk to synagogue and keep kosher and do all of these things. And this guy's like not even getting to the second commandment without breaking that. And I was like, okay. So it was very hard because it really was very confusing seeing, you know, this disciplined version of Judaism be so undisciplined in his personal life, and the way it ravaged my mother emotionally and left this sort of wake of chaos in its path was deeply hard and disturbing.
So, first of all, your father left the family, I think, when you were 6.
Mm-hmm. Introduced me to a brother I didn't ask about or know about, and then told me not to tell my mother that I met him, which was very complicated.
Oh, yeah. That's putting a lot of secrecy on your shoulders.
Yeah.
Hiding it from your mother, who you were going to continue to live with while he went to another country. Yeah.
Correct.
So how did that affect your relationship with Judaism?
You know, it's funny. I find Andrew's answer to actually be a perfect embodiment of how I view my own relationship with religion, which is I really enjoy the traditions. Mm-hmm. I enjoy the spirituality and the historical tentacles of that spirituality. It ties you to a time, a place, a people that I think is really interesting. I find my way to faith on my own terms, and I really find that faith has been useful in some of the hardships that I've gone through in my life. Recently, my mom had a medical emergency that came out of left field. And I will be very honest. I found faith in a place that I haven't been looking in a long time to find it, and I found it to be at the very least a useful escape, and maybe even more than that. And you know, my mom had a very small chance of surviving and did. And
I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you. And it's also complicated because my grandparents were both Holocaust survivors, and their families were executed simply for being followers of a faith. So I can never fully abandon this thing that I've been, that is my birthright, whether I want it or not. And so I find that finally at 45, I'm able to comfortably define religion on my own terms and also celebrate it on my own terms. And my wife is Catholic, and we are very, very open with the children about both of these things. And we celebrate Christmas, and we celebrate Hanukkah, we celebrate Passover, we celebrate Easter. And what I love is giving them the options that I was never given, giving them a direction and letting them choose their own path.
I think that kind of like dual religion is an interesting lesson in how there are different versions of trying to get to an understanding of the world, how it exists, what your place in it is, rituals to help you live your life. Mm-hmm. There isn't necessarily one correct way. that there's alternate ways with all having the same goal.
Well, this brings us back to the Book of Mormon, because at the end of the Book of Mormon, Josh's character, Elder Cunningham, basically creates a new religion based on this weird sort of mashup of like Star Wars characters and
Lord of the Rings,
and he sort of mashes it all together.
And here's where our real lives intersect with our characters, because Andrew calls this weird, and I'm like, this is perfectly normal.
It's totally normal, but it makes sense for the people in this Ugandan village that he makes the religion make sense.
And he's criticized by
me. Yes, and by the Mormon Church.
And by the Mormon Church for doing this. The character's criticized in the show, but the character explains that, no, I'm doing this to prevent people from doing bad things.
Yes, yes.
And it's true. So you're making up these stories, but they're stories to prevent people from killing people. I mean,
castration,
mutilation,
genital mutilation, and all of that. So you're doing a good thing, even though the elders of the church are convincing you of like lying.
That's right.
I want to move on to something else. At some point, you both left the show. Did you leave because your contract was up? Did you leave at the same time?
We did leave at the same time. Josh and I both had this very unique experience where we
so weird.
We opened the Book of Mormon. We were both nominated for Tony Awards. We both lost those Tony Awards.
Probably because you were competing against each other.
Perhaps. Let's go with that.
You split the vote.
We
split the vote.
We split the vote. We then went out to Los Angeles on mine was on a vacation. I took a week off from the show.
Same.
We had a bunch of meetings in LA. We were, very popular. These two guys from the biggest Broadway hit. Everyone wanted to meet with us. We both got TV shows for NBC. Josh's was called 1600 Penn. Mine was called The New Normal. They both aired the same week. We went to the upfronts together. They were both canceled.
The same week.
And so we went through this ride together that was so... And look, other people had been through it. Kristen Chenoweth had gone through that, except she won her Tony Award. But I watched her do the exact thing that I was trying to do, which was I didn't want to leave the Book of Mormon until I had a job that I thought I could be proud of and that would somehow elevate me to another level. And this opportunity seemed like it was too good to miss. And I had started working on Girls for HBO at that point, but I was only a guest star, so I was coming in and out, and I was still doing the show at night. So that felt a little different. But this move for Josh back to LA, me to LA for the first time, the fact that we got to do that together, make these shows, and then have them both go away was hilarious. It was an interesting time.
I was definitely, I think, more done than Andrew was by that point.
I could have stayed longer.
He is gifted in the sense that he really is somebody who can do this and quite well for as long as he puts his mind to it. I had checked out at that point, and I felt like I was doing a disservice to myself and the audience.
You didn't seem like you were checked out.
No, but I started forgetting lines on stage. I was, I wasn't present.
You were ready,
and I was ready. But I had also been doing it for so long.
Yes, that is true.
From its origin, that I was like, I wanted to try new things.
Yeah.
And I get very sort of, when I sort of do the same thing again and again, I start to get bored. Let's call that ADHD. But I was, at that point, I was very ready. And I look back at that now with a lot of regret.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I appreciated this incredible moment until I was able to reflect on it actually years later. Because when you're in it, when you're in the eye of the hurricane, it's there's a lot going on that you can't stop and settle yourself and go, oh my God, this is a moment that I'll never have again.
Yeah.
This is so unbelievably unique.
Well, we both had people telling us, we had large groups of people telling us, like, don't stay too long.
You're bigger than this.
And you don't want to miss this opportunity.
Right.
And even though something in my gut, for me personally, thought, I would like to stay a little bit longer.
Do you regret not staying longer?
I do.
I do too.
I do. I wish that I had stayed longer. These opportunities come up and you're like, well, I don't want to lose it.
Yeah.
And will Ryan Murphy ever call me again? I don't know. Like, will we ever do this again? And so I said yes. But I do regret not staying longer.
It has been wonderful to speak to you both. So glad that you've had such interesting careers even after the Book of Mormon. And thank you so much for coming back to our show.
Oh, my gosh.
Thank you for having us. You're the best.
Thank you for keeping us on track. Most interviewers don't have that in them to deal with Josh and I together.
Yeah,
so.
we were very disciplined today.
We were very disciplined.
Well,
We
thank
took
you
this
for that.
very seriously. Very seriously. We're huge fans of yours and
thank
your
you.
show.
Thank you, and I have yours.
It's a
You
real
are
honor
genius.
to be back here. So thank you.
Andrew Rannells and Josh Gad starred in the original cast of the Book of Mormon.